learn because the system does not really recognize them. We are happy now. There's a lot of discussion around pastoralism as being one of the contributor to the climate change, and this probably could be an opportunity, and that is why we are on a crossroad to make decisions that really favor us, because we have never had an opportunity to have decisions by government. And even I see some progressive government like the government of Kenya, but there are some governments really that still stick to the old thinking about pastoralism as backward, people who are destroying environment, and as people, and the law, the legal system is more to control the pastoralists, not to enable. So we don't have enabling policies for the pastoralists. We have policies that restrain the pastoralists from further destroying environment according to their mentality. I think we are 6 panelists here, and I think I have a very short time. Maybe I stop there for a moment.
Okay, very good. I think I will come back to that. It's a very big topic, but I think I'll take the mic to Adamu. This,
so clear,
you have to separate your name.
So that you felt guilty.
Okay, I'm guilty. Okay, quick one. In my presentation, I explained how we are struggling to have institutional recognition. And it's something common in many countries. But I think there's also in the literature somehow in West Africa, collective action, organization between pastors, creation of big institutions have helped them to have a voice. I wanted you to speak to that, whether that voice is a correct observation from our end, or we need to do more for us to, get that state recognition of our institutions and our processes and regulations.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je vais partir par le constat par lequel a commencé mon collègue avocat, pour dire que toute la base a été de fausser la politique autour de la tenue foncière. Elle a été gérée et gouvernée par la tradition sédentaire. Ceci est d'autant plus vrai que dans toute l'Afrique, mais également, plus spécifiquement en Afrique centrale également, où on considère que pour accéder et être propriétaire d'un terrain, il faut une certaine mesure. Donc, ça veut dire qu'il faut mettre en valeur d'une façon que seuls les sédentaires le font. Par exemple, on dit qu'il faut construire tel genre de maison, il faut planter telle sorte d'arbre, ce qui est totalement en déphasage à la vie, au mode de vie des sédentaires. Ça, c'est d'une part. Et toute la politique de la tenue foncière est basée sur cette question. Accès et propriétaire, mais sur le mode de vie des sédentaires. D'office, les pastoralistes se sont exclus davantage. Maintenant, revenant à votre question. Est-ce que les voies sont suffisantes ou on doit faire encore davantage? Je crois que nous n'avons pas encore atteint notre objectif pour s'arrêter là. Nous avons l'Assemblée d'aujourd'hui nous montre que nous avons déjà acquis quelques progrès, mais que nous devrons aller de l'avant. Et ça, comme l'a dit certaines personnes ici, il faut que nous le fassions ensemble, comme vous avez dit, au sein des institutions, mais au sein des autres organisations, mais avoir la base de nos populations. C'est-à-dire, c'est eux qui sortent, c'est eux qui disent comment est-ce que, c'est eux qui doivent venir influencer et montrer que notre mode de vie aussi a un apport conséquent sur l'environnement, sur l'économie, sur tout autre aspect de la vie. Et c'est à ce moment-là seulement que nous devons prouver que notre mode de vie aussi n'est pas que des pleurs, mais c'est une contribution à toute à l'avancée du monde. Donc, les réseautages, les institutions ensemble, je crois que c'est plus que nécessaire pour l'instant. Nous avons, par exemple, autour des politiques, analysé au mois d'octobre, avec, je pense, l'apport de AFPAT au Tchad et avec d'autres organisations, où on a analysé des déclarations. Parce que nous avons chaque fois des déclarations après déclarations, des déclarations après déclarations sur le pastoralisme. Et nous tous, nous savons que les déclarations ne sont pas contraignantes. Il faut donc passer au-delà, aller voir soit les traités qui sont contraignants et qui peuvent contraindre les États à respecter ce mode de vie qui a un apport assez conséquent dans l'avancée de tout aspect du monde. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Amadou. I'll avoid the second time. So thank you so much for your very well thought reaction to that. Now I will come back to Lucy. And my question is from my presentation again. We've seen is that policy. It's very broad. So we've seen most national policies are developed with biased mindset in the past, and I think it still persists, while those that are developed with positive mindset are not also fully implemented. And this is part of our problem. How can we overcome this entrenched problem of policy, mismatch?
Thank you very much.
You have to put on. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think your presentations were really very perfect in terms of looking at the different issues. And I think also Hindu had brought up quite some information and looking at how we can move ahead and all the issues that have already been discussed. When you look at issues of policy, implementation has always been a big problem. And indeed, we have very, very good policies, not only at the country levels in Africa, but also at the AU and IGAD. And all these policies are lying somewhere, gathering dust, as we always say. And we always wonder what really it means. And I think Porokwa was bringing up quite some very important issues, asking why that issues of pastoralism, rangelands are not taken very seriously, are not really seen like they bring any economy in any country. And indeed, if they could be treated equally, this could be something that would be able to change. So for now, you ask, what do we do? I think we have an opportunity. With this year of rangelands and pastoralism, we have an opportunity to really bring issues on the table. The recommendations that were given by the gentleman from South Africa is talked about awareness creation, enhancing the capacity, and making sure that our own pastoralists from the ground, that includes women and youth, because they haven't been mentioned here. But I think this is collective. It's a collective way of working together. If we only work in isolation or just look at a few people who can promote some of the issues, it won't work. It's a high time for us to wake up and see how we can. We have a lot of challenges, like what you mentioned about data. You can imagine we are still looking at the data of the 90s, while if you go to agriculture sector or other sectors, you'll find up-to-date data. Where is this problem? What happens? We need to really think hard, and the strategies that have been put in place will also face challenges if we don't get funding to make the pastoralists continue working, not only wait for COP, the Conference of Parties, or for other meetings to come along, but to have continuously and see how they can continue pushing. We also must strategize to see how we get into government, because if we don't do that, we will go back to what Porokwa was saying. It's a question of just holding on to that, because the other governments are all not really keen. And it is a high time, and this particular time we have this opportunity to ensure that the donors also work with us. Because if they don't work, partners don't work with us, and they just take up the other sectors, then it becomes a problem. I was worried a few years ago when we had a discussion, I think it was one of the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, where the European countries were saying that we should not do pastoralism, the cows should be stopped, meat has to be stopped, and we start eating insects and vegetables and so on. I was wondering whether they know this is our economy in terms of looking at livestock. So we need to do something. We need to really wake up and take this as an opportunity that we can be able to carry forward and make a lot of changes, but it has to be collective. And also we have to use the human rights approach to make sure that we are very inclusive in terms of our work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very powerful. Thank you. I think I'll shift gear to Dr. Florence. And my question is very speculative. You work with a smallholder, which means your work is very much connected to the voice on the ground. And here we are gathered to pull this voice together. Is it possible you can share with us, based on your work, what are the key things that has to end up in this kind of global conversation? What do you think are the pressing issues that farmers or the smallholder farmers that you work with are constantly talking about, and we should take cognizance of that in our discussion in the next 2 days?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to actually raise the voices of the developing farmers. When we talk smallholder, it's not necessarily linked to the size of the land. Of course, I think in many contexts, we are talking about somebody that has a small parcel, but in the context of where I am coming from, we are looking at even land that can be thousands of hectares of land, but their performance or productivity is considered low in terms of what they can achieve. The key pressing issues that keep coming right at the top: access to land or land tenure, access to finance or affordable finance, and also access to platforms for policy influence. And then, of course, certainly the disempowerment of community leadership or traditional leadership. They do not have power to actually change or effect control, accountability, and management of their environments. So in the context of the smallholder, the narrative has been over the past 20 years or 2 decades, commercialize, and that commercialize is based on you could be selling double the number without looking at what is the effect in terms of where you are producing from. So there is the fragmentation in terms of who is the driver of commercialize. When you really dissect it, you recognize that the driver of commercialize is those that are in the upper part of the value chain. They need assets, they need the flow of our animals into their systems to sustain the value chains, to sustain their outputs and their contractual obligations. But that doesn't then open scope for the smallholder to be empowered. So there is no structuring one of the smallholder because our boundaries are constantly shifting. So when it is voting time, you see that this community had its boundary getting to this delineation, and then it is shifted. So that changes the structure and opportunity of that community to actually influence the decisions with regard to management of their environment, their livestock resources. So that disempowerment, and then of course, people who are beginning to play that are professionals. You are appointed as a government employee just to a community that you are not part of. So you are just there to give administrative support and not necessarily embedded into the activities and their objectives of the communities. So the challenges continue because the underlying one is when you don't have land, you have no access to money, you do not have access to any blended systems. The policies are there to say you can get blended finance 50%, 90%, but you need to have your financials in place. And then you also need to be sedentary is one of the issues. You must be sedentary, otherwise you have no access to support. Traceability says you must be geo-referenced, you must stay put in a specific area, and then you can qualify on the checklist. So if we also look at our trading systems, they are going in that direction where it's becoming more and more expensive for the smallholder to participate in the production of meat and leather for the systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll shift to the next panelist, Ada. I'll ask you operational question in that I've seen in my entire career, in the last 15 years, I've participated in so many COPs. And in every COPs, I see the mix of representation of pastoralists. But I've seen constantly the same individuals in different COP conversation. And I've a political question. How do we, because we need to get authentic voice from the conversation, as you said. How do we make sure that the pastoralist agenda is well represented in this global forum, like the one we are attending later in this year? Is the level of representation individuals need to be broadened? How do we engage? Because I'm trying to just see how high global conversations are, and connected to that global conversation require people who are also understanding the space. But sometimes mostly our constituents, which is pastoralists, they are not in that space. So how do we harness that voice and have authentic voice on that platform?
Merci pour votre question pertinente. À mon avis, je pense que pour arriver à cela, il faut qu'il y ait un point de départ. Et le point de départ, c'est au niveau local. Il faut qu'il y ait que les pastoralistes soient inclus dans toutes les prises de décision. Il faut qu'ils soient organisés à la base avant d'aller au plus haut niveau et aller au niveau international. Nous avons besoin de ça. Et je pense que c'est un tournant décisif pour cette nouvelle année qui va commencer pour l'année internationale pour les pastoralistes. Et je pense que ça va marquer un grand départ pour la survie et le développement durable du pastoraliste.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent. I think I have a question for any of you can answer. It's on one of the axes of evil that I presented. It's on carbon trading in pastoral areas. Personally, I feel it's a very complex space, technically, financially. I wanted to know whether, as indigenous people, it's a new government actually see as an opportunity, because the way it is packaged in a very simple way, they say we trade there, we're not interested in the land. It's so much broker driven. So I have two questions in one. First is, where do we stand on embracing or not embracing the carbon trading? Two, is there any model that has worked in communal land space from wherever you come from that has actually said this one will take care of the interests of the pastoralist? Okay, you can, and then you can come. I think you can start. You have the mic. Thank you.
De la communauté d'où je viens, le Niger, il y a une ligne qui est tracée, qui marque une ligne de démarcation entre la zone agricole et la zone pastorale. Et à quoi on assiste aujourd'hui? C'est que les agriculteurs, ils veulent à chaque fois profiter pour aller toujours en avant et récupérer les terres pastorales au profit des terres agricoles. Et en dehors de ça, il y a des projets qui viennent pour exploiter les terres pastorales au profit des projets pour le carbone.
Okay, yeah, I think you want to take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can only talk on my personal position because we have not had an agreement on what we think about carbon. Also, when you talk about the carbon scheme generally, it is a very complex scheme, which definitely, like any other initiative globally, is generated outside our own. So it is something that is brought in, and on my position and probably with the community that I'm working with, the issue of carbon is not first of all a solution to climate change by itself, because you don't really do anything, and those that are buying for carbon are not also doing anything to improve the situation globally. So Morally, it is something that is questionable that we need to talk about. But now I'm from Tanzania, and already we have very serious problem with carbon companies and the brokers that you are talking about. That there's no much that is told about carbon to the community. They're simply being told that the people that are suffering from getting air in Europe, and they want to give you money so that you. So there's a lot of lies around carbon, which the community is not told about. The other issue, which is very important, is the issue of land tenure. The land tenure system for the pastoralists is already fragile. It is very fragile to an extent that anything that can be done on it will take away land from the people. And most of the carbon credits in Tanzania, particularly, are more than 30 years agreement between the proponent and the community. So having a 30 years contract where you are uh, affected with, because we are talking of pastoralists and we are talking of mobility. And mobility is very important for pastoralists. And we are talking of the concept that we know as indigenous people, that increase and decrease of livestock in the community is one of the mechanism of managing stock. Now you are putting the concept of carrying capacity to the pastoralists, that you can only get the money that you are getting, and you cannot breach the contract as long as you remain with a certain number of livestock in that area. So definitely it is something that have to be discussed further. There's a lot of cons on carbon credit, and of course, even the mechanism of managing that, of determining how much carbon, the transparency, the accountability, the proponents, all this is not very clear to the community.
Okay, yeah,
So-
sorry. Yeah, we're closing in 2 minutes. People are hungry, but yeah. Okay.
I know this is a very sensitive question that you brought for us towards the end, but I want just to align myself with what Porokwa has said, but we should also look, as he said very clearly, let's look at the issue of land tenure. And let's also know that in years back, there was the community land. And also, you know that some pastoralists already own land, the individual land, which is also bringing complications. The other biggest issue, Porokwa, you've mentioned it very clearly, is awareness, is education for the communities. And this has been really terrible because they come there with the people and discuss things. There is no issue of free, prior informed consent that give us this land, we do what we want. And what do you want to do? So those are some of the key issues that are there. And let's agree, we really have a lot to do. And even though these people shy of mentioning, but it's also good to discuss about these range lands, pastoralism, and also discuss about the individual lands and what are we still having? What do we still have in the different countries, and how can we really be able to do most of the things that are needed? Let me stop there to go to Adamu because I think
Merci beaucoup. Je crois que la première intervention a été déjà faite par mon cher collègue. Je crois que la question carbone est une question complexe. Mais est-ce que devrions-nous être à l'écart dès maintenant? Sinon, on risque de rater le voyage. Nous sommes obligés et contraints, donc, d'embarquer dans ce voyage. Pas pour aller en Mongolie pour dormir, mais pour aller en Mongolie et montrer que le mode de vie des pastoralistes, qui est essentiellement la mobilité, favorise vraiment l'accès carbone. Et ça, nous devrons le faire à travers quoi? À travers la collaboration et la coopération avec les centres de recherche, et pour avoir des données concrètes pour pouvoir défendre nos positions. Je pense que si nous n'avons pas des résultats concrets qui démontrent que notre mode de vie est favorable au crédit carbone et également influencer les politiques de la tenue foncière, nous risquons de rater l'avion pour l'instant. Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Anyone?
Would you allow me just 30 seconds?
Yeah,
Yes. I want to pose a question also to the audience to say, what do we do with those that have been harmed now by the contracts that are 30 years, 40 years, what should be the position that which you take? Because most of those were taken in ignorance.
Okay, that's a complex question, and I asked last before reason, and you've added another question to it, which is very interesting. I think, in the interest of time, and I want to close this. I would have given you few questions from the floor, but because of lunch and how we have it to our time, we'll stop it here. And I really want to thank panelists. They were not prepared. I haven't sent them any question because I realized when I read about them, they are all subject experts and they didn't let me down. Thank you. Thank you so much. And have a good time over lunch hour. And, we'll come back and discuss these issues. It's just a flavor. So we'll have more discussion, in-depth discussion, to take a position that is going to inform our community. Thank you so much. Oh, there's lunch announcement.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we've all earned our lunch, have we? All right, so the lunch will be served at Pi's restaurant, close to where we had breakfast earlier today. And it's with some very good views close to the swimming pool. So ensure you have your meal card that will be handed by the team from Impact. So ensure that you have your meal card before